and top stories across all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Albert Destrade, alongside my co-host, the Big O, Orestes Destrade. Now, let's start off at the top of the order. There's one name in Major League Baseball who, dare I say, might be the biggest name in all of major sports. That's the one and only Shohei Ohtani. Oh, he was all the buzz this offseason. His free agency was covered like nothing I'd ever seen before, and he ended up signing the largest contract in the history of professional sports with the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is a two-time MVP. This is the greatest baseball player since, dare I say, the great Babe Ruth. But with all that fanfare and all that success, there's been one large story that's put a little bit of an asterisk next to his name, and that's been the story with his interpreter, Ippei Mizuhara. With your knowledge and insight of Japanese baseball, give me your thoughts on this Shohei Ohtani gambling allegation story.
Well, starting firstly, back to then coming to the, to the live action now, shall I say. My history in Japan, dates back to the late 80s and into the 90s of my career there, and obviously into the 2000s, where even after I stopped playing in Japan, I was been going back and forth and watching the great talent come out of there. Hideki Matsui, obviously Ichiro, who I played against. And then what I was able to watch with the Nippon Ham Fighters, an incredible young talent by the name of Shohei Ohtani, back in the mid-2000s, right before he came over in 18 to the Anaheim Angels at the time. And I'll tell you what, I had never seen anything like it. I will say that his offense had not really caught up to his greatness of pitching. He was a better pitcher. He was a great pitcher, good offense. And then subsequently, after his major injury back in 20, he was able to really hone in and work for a whole year's time on hitting because he couldn't pick up a baseball, right? And then he became this great hitter. Now we're back to even though he's, hemmed up right now and he can't pitch till next year. You fast forward to Ippei Mizuhara and his interpreter, who he befriended before he became his interpreter back in Tokyo days and in the Hokkaido days. They became great friends, and Shohei, asked for Ippei to represent him.
Yeah, these two have a long-standing relationship, though. This isn't a guy that is just dropped on him. He was someone that Shohei hand-selected and knew from, many, many years ago. So I think that's a really interesting element. It's their relationship, and I think you've had a chance to meet Ippei as well, correct?
Right, correct. Many times, yes. And I think that really the bottom line is that we're finding out an unfortunate, nefarious story going on with Ippei being unfortunately, a degenerate gambler, really, if you put it on it, because it's way beyond the initial $4.5 million. Now it's, up to, the $16 million that he was funneling through the account. So many shenanigans that was going on. Now, the big question is not that that Shohei Ohtani also gambled. I think everybody across the globe kind of believes that was not the case. The jury's still out there as far as how much he did know. When did Shohei Ohtani actually know? What's being, the story that's laid out right now is that he didn't know at all and that he was just completely frauded. And I'm going to lean towards believing that right now until I gather further information. But either way, it's still a fraud. Either way, it's still a case that unfortunately stems from an issue and a real, addiction that Ippei was having, and he found himself needing to kind of create this scam.
This story has so many layers, and I think that if you look at all the different timelines, let's consider these elements. First, everyone knows, it's no secret, Major League Baseball has always had a very negative relationship with all things gambling. From Pete Rose being banned, from the strictness, the iron fist, if you will, that Major League Baseball has handled all things gambling.
The Black Sox,
Jackson in the Black Sox World Series. Yes.
Right.
And that relationship really has shifted to the point where now Major League Baseball has embraced the world of gambling and sports betting and daily fantasy sports, where it's kind of wild if you watch just an everyday telecast of Major League Baseball. There's always some element of, here are some sports betting looks, here are the live betting odds, here are these prop bets. Even the MLB Network itself has a television show specifically dedicated to providing gambling insights. Yeah. That's how far we've come to that. So that's, to me, is one big element. The second element is how this money came out of his account under Shohei's nose. And the third thing to me that's really alarming is that $700 million payday that he just signed on the dotted line for. That deferred money. People looked at those numbers. $2 million is what he's being paid by the Dodgers for the 2024 season. And all these large sums are being deferred way down the road, which leads me to believe, why is he doing this? Again, we know Shohei's committed to winning. We know this guy really wants to be part of an organization that is competing for a World Series championship. So is he a good guy trying to do the right thing, or was this deferral of large sums of money an indicator or a smoking gun of something was going on happening?
I'm going to work backwards on these points that you just made, and working backwards as far as talking about the historic contract, $700 million, 10-year, of which he's willing to take, only $20 million in actual salary, an average of $2 million a year, $600, and just an ungodly amount of money,
astronomical figures.
Here's the catch to that. Number one, he is in Los Angeles. He is in California. The highest tax bracket of people that make hundreds of millions of dollars is in California. So you're getting, New York and California. So anywhere, any way that you could kind of like redirect your monies. For example, Mike Trout has a home in Florida. His homestead is actually here where I live in Tampa, Florida, not Los Angeles, but he's still getting hit dramatically. The only other place that really kind of becomes a problem beyond LA and New York in that bracket would be playing in Toronto, playing in Canada because of the exchange thing. So I think there is an impetus by his financial people, though I never thought that it was going to be of that magnitude. I would have thought that it'd be, okay, he's going to make $15 million instead of $70 million a year, but then he's going to defer, so now you do the math, $300 million or so was going to be cashed in and another $400 million was going to be deferred. He went really crazy. So that does give you some thinking. But the bottom line is that I think the deferment has a lot to do with tax ramifications, him figuring that 10 years from now, he'll probably be done with his playing days. And then the monies will be sent to Tokyo, to some other, whether he's in the United States or not, most likely he'll be back in Japan, and he'll work it accordingly. Now, secondly, as far as the deferment, you also have to remember, last year alone, Shohei Ohtani made $65 million, not from playing baseball. The majority of that was from advertising, and it's only growing. So maybe his thought was, I'm going to defer because I know I've got 20, 30, 40, 60, 100 million coming in other ways. Remember how Michael Jordan accrued all of the money? It was like Nike. It wasn't really, even though he was getting paid 20, 30 million by the Bulls a year to play, it was really with the other, advertising and sponsors. So maybe he was thinking that way. So then you're going in the, man, am I getting, funneled all this money? So why am I going to give him opportunity to take more money? The reality is that plenty of money was still coming in and is still coming in. So I don't know if that's a proper case. I will say that, getting back to your first point, I played winter ball in the Dominican Republic, and I'm going back into the 80s and 90s, right? When you're playing winter ball in the Dominican Republic, every pitch, forget about game, in the stands would be betted. Every pitch. So, whoever it was, Jose De Leon was on the mound. Pedro Martinez was on the mound. I could hear people going, $5 that it's going to be a curveball. $2 that it's going to be a strike or it's going to be a ball. $5 that this guy's going to get a hit. Incredibly, never did I ever think that you're going to fast forward 30 years and that MLB actually would be applying that same metrics. And it's not sabermetrics, it's gambling metrics and now being into the thing.
No, this is paper metrics right here.
It's paper metrics, and it's a complicated, slippery slope that is paying. Obviously, the other question in this, and I throw to you your advice and thoughts on this, is can you separate the player from betting in the game and the game of betting from the player? And I'm talking about the player being MLB, NHL, and NBA. We just saw Porter, just get completely banned for life, from ever playing in another NBA game because he was involved in a betting scam within his own, NBA. That's the slippery slope, but I think the leagues feel that they can patrol that gambling issue, and that this particularly was not the case.
Yeah, I think that's where the line has to be drawn in the sand in a yes or no. This is a ultimate case of if you cross this line and you affect the integrity of the game. That's what I think Major League Baseball and all the big leagues really are they have to be a watchdog about, because once situations happen where the product on the field and the results of the games may or may not be influenced by players who have a vested interest, a financial vested interest, or a third party linked to them, that's where it gets really dicey. But, you brought up a name that I thought is very, very interesting, because in the many years that you and I have followed Major League Baseball and sports as closely as we have, I don't think there's another situation. I don't think there's a precedent for anything like this other than the name you brought up, and that is Michael Jordan. Think about this, Shohei Ohtani is not just a baseball player. He's not just an athlete. He's a brand.
Yes.
He is a name that is globally recognized to the point where he is what I believe to be our generation's version of, first you had Jordan, then you had LeBron, then you had, and Tom Brady and those guys.
Tom Brady mixes in there.
These Derek Jeter, these names that are that are synonymous with
and iconic and beyond the norm.
Right. These are people that are bigger than the sport they play in, that are recognized by not just fans of that sport, but just everyday people. And I think Ohtani was on the precipice of becoming one of those names and one of those brands. And man, it's so interesting because we all know it's no secret. Michael Jordan had some gamble in it. And his stories were publicized, but they were publicized a little bit differently. I think David Stearns, as the commissioner, the former commissioner of the NBA, especially during MJ's tenure, was very careful to make sure that MJ was always protected, because MJ took the NBA. People don't realize, people that are in the younger demographic,
the transition period.
Oh man, the NBA and the growth of that league from the early pre-Jordan days to what it is now is monumental. The pull and popularity and just size of the NBA was nothing compared to what it is pre and post Michael. So I think
and the style of play. I mean, his style of play was very rarely seen. There was a handful of guys that could do some of the things that Michael could do. Elgin Baylor and Clyde Drexler and Dr. J. Yeah, but really he did it all, because that's where Ohtani comes into the picture. Because remember, Michael Jordan was winning MVPs, championships, scoring titles, and Defensive Player of the Year. So he was a double threat and then a triple threat, if you will, as far as outside the game, quadruple threat as far as, monetizing the game and taking it global. So it was Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Kareem, and all that before Jordan, but they didn't have this game style. Now we're seeing the game style of Jordan on a day in, day out basis, but he ushered that in. And then obviously with the Nike brand and the Air Jordan, took it to a stratosphere. You're right. This kid, because of the defense in baseball being obviously the guy with the ball on the mound, he's technically playing defense, but and then the offensive stature and the world stature, MLB is going to protect him just like they protected Michael Jordan. So it's long, just like was the case with Michael Jordan. There was never any thought that Michael ever did any gambling issues with reference to basketball. Do you remember any articles, talks, podcasts, anything saying, yeah, there's plenty talking about his gambling craziness on golf, on, tiddlywinks the guy would bet.
Oh, yeah, you saw it.
Never on basketball.
Yeah, he'd go to the casino the night before a game and go to Borgata, come back, play a basketball game, and drop 30 on him.
And drop 30, 40 points. Well, this kid now is tied, unfortunately, to a close member of his almost quote-unquote family, his interpreter best friend, tied to gambling. But if you notice, they've separated and made a China wall of him not being a part of the baseball, nor any of even the gambling. So that's been segregated, and I don't think anybody's going to ever find out anything other than that. Now, there might be some other underlying storylines that could be interesting down the road with reference to how much did he know, when did he know, and situations like that would tie in back to your kind of like conspiracy theory of why the contract was so backladen. But there's no doubt that he's being protected, and I'm not going to say rightfully so in the sense of like exonerate him if he has been guilty of gambling. They're going full force to prove that he's not involved with the gambling, just like Michael Jordan wasn't with reference to any NBA games. Yeah,
to conclude the point, and you're wearing the Cebu Lions jersey proudly right here, as we can see it. The Nippon series, great right here. I know from your experience out there, the Japanese take a lot of pride in how they carry themselves, in their name, in the idea of honor and integrity. So I think the story will have a resolution. And I'll tell you this, I still think there's more to come. I feel like there's some information that we don't know just yet.
Correct.
But I feel that when the pieces come together, I'm hoping, for the sake of Major League Baseball, the sport of baseball, that Shohei is on the innocent and clean side of this. I know there's been a lot of speculation that Ippei may be a fall guy or might be a cover in some sort of way. My impression from the outside is I don't think he was hands-on, but I am very curious, if we can get some more information eventually down the road and see, is there more to this story that maybe the general public isn't privy to?
Yeah, well, listen, there is a saying, that I don't know if it really truly applies here, and it's follow the money, but I don't know. I think that the money has been followed, and it leads to Ippei. What the other things is, follow how that actually happened. So we're going to see, and my gut feeling is that there is more, but it's still more that it exonerates Shohei Ohtani, and in the end, that's the most important factor, and we can get to keep this great guy and not have him be in a compromised situation.
Well, to use that term, follow the money, let's jump over to our next segment here. Personal favorite of mine here, guys. We're jumping into beef or no beef. In this segment, we talk about a couple issues and players and situations in Major League Baseball, and O and I will give our take on whether we are for it and we have no beef, or we're against it. We got a little bit of beef. So last week we discussed the pitching epidemic going on in Major League Baseball, where
injuries,
where high-end frontline starters, elite relievers are struggling with arm injuries, generally of the UCL variety, elbow ligaments, a variety of injuries. So let's dig a little bit further into that situation. Oh, and I'm going to present this to you. MLB pitch usage. I'm going to give you a number here. In 2022, the usage of the fastball, good old number one, the heater, was down to 48.6%. It was the first time since these numbers have been recorded where the fastball was used less than 50% of the time.
How about that?
My question to you is this: beef or no beef with the way that pitchers are using fastballs compared to sliders, breaking balls, and off-speed pitches?
Let me put it to you this way. Damn Skippy, I have a beef with this. I'm telling you right now, it's dramatic and it's over the top. Listen, when you look at the injuries, and we've discussed it, I look at 3 or 4 parameters to this and probably reasons that they continue to happen. Number one, you can go all the way back to the situation and the advent of travel baseball, because I really think that the younger kids that end up becoming pro players, especially big league, major league players, are throwing too hard, too dramatic, too intense every weekend in, weekend out. So you're not playing fun, lighthearted games anymore. You know, just little league games and rec league games. Now you're playing, you know, you got to win on Friday to get to Saturday, and Saturday to get to Sunday, and maybe win a doubleheader, and you're pitching a bunch of times. So that's number one. Number two is the actual training that's going on. Are they using like the heavy balls now, the weighted balls a little bit too much? So are they straining? Because remember, the majority of these injuries are the elbow. Number three, the pitch clock we talked about, I think that's a lesser of one. I think it's actually more likely maybe number 4. And you know what number 4 is? The fact that fastballs have gone down under 50%, but fastball velocity has gone up over 95 miles an hour to 98, consistently 100. So I was talking to a good friend of mine, Tom Niedenfuhr, who was one of the guys back in the 80s and 90s that did throw over 95 miles an hour, when most guys were way under.
Well, 95 was rare. 95 was bringing it, you know?
It's crazy. Nowadays, 95, you know, it's like an average high schooler is throwing 95. So you're throwing that hard, but you're going to end up throwing more breaking pitches. And the pitches that really hurt elbows, and any doctor will tell you, are 2 main pitches. Number 1, or 3 things: bad arm action, and you know, where your release spot is and how you're flinging it, of course. But technically, actually, believe it or not, when you're bad arm action and you're cupping the ball, and they say like they cup it in the back, that usually affects more your shoulders.
Right.
What we're seeing is elbow injuries in the ulnar nerve. So that tends to be more in the actual pitch selection and movement. Okay, curveball is like you're turning off a light. Fastball, you're not doing really anything. 2-seam, 4-seam. It's the sliders and the splitters that are causing the majority of these elbow injuries. So dare I say, I was talking to Tom Niedenfuhr, who was a fastball, curveball, changeup guy, and he's like, guys like Fairbanks from the other day, you know, threw a wild pitch late in the game that turned the game into extra innings, and he throws 99 miles an hour, and he's throwing more sliders than fastballs. So you're kind of creating the perfect storm yourself if you're not using to spot your fastball. I'm not taking middle with a fastball. Tom Seaver threw predominantly fastballs and great curveballs, and he mixed in his sliders and changeup. But my gosh, it's spotting your fastball. My least favorite pitcher was probably Greg Maddux. And he had all the pitches, but you know how he got me mostly out? Was spotting a 4-seamer and 2-seamer. 4-seamer away, 2-seamer in on a lefty, and it would come back in. It's crazy. So the manipulation that he could do on just a fastball and a changeup was dramatic. Not everybody is a Hall of Famer at the level of manipulation of the professor, of Greg Maddux, but how are you throwing more, harder, but using that hardness and velocity less? So yeah, I have a beef with it.
I'll tell you this, though, and I think you're going to be a little surprised. I actually have no beef.
Oh, what?
And I'll tell you my counter. Here's my counter. So you had a long career playing professional baseball. I played a little bit myself, but I was just a college guy. Played 4 years of college baseball. And I got to tell you, from my personal experience, I saw some pretty good pitchers in college throw a heck of a lot of innings, week in, week out. And if I tell you how many 9-pitch, 9-slider at-bats I had in college, it was a lot of them. There's a reason why I'm sitting here and doing what I'm doing, and you did what you did. So I'm telling you this. I think the idea of being off-speed, heavy, pitching off of a slider, there's guys now that I watch, I'll give you an example. A guy like Pierce Johnson was a closer for the Colorado Rockies last year.
Yeah.
Not good.
No.
Came over to the Atlanta Braves.
Now he's starting and killing it.
No, this guy operates 96, 97 and probably throws, I don't know his numbers off the top of my head, but I'm telling you, if he throws over 20% fastballs, I'd be shocked. This guy lives off an 86-mile-an-hour curveball. It's not even a slider. It's an 86-mile-an-hour curveball, and he throws it literally, about 70% of the time. And I watch this guy, and I'm just in awe of him. And you know what I say? I'm like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. You were pitching off your fastball in Colorado, and he was getting hit pretty hard. Comes over to Atlanta Braves. Rich Cran, it's like, buddy, this slider you throw, this is your pitch, or this curveball, rather.
I will tell you this, though. I'm going to jump in there real quick because here's the thing. So what that tells me is that one of two things. You either didn't have, and a combination of these two things, you either didn't have the confidence in your fastball. He had the fastball, right? Because he's throwing 96, 97.
Yeah, he can get it.
And I know, listen, the side caveat is that I don't care how hard you throw, you can throw up to 110. A major league hitter will eventually time a straight fastball, especially down the middle or in the same spot. Eventually, he's going to catch up to it, But so number one, if you don't have confidence in that fastball, even though you're throwing it at that low, and then you don't have confidence or you don't have command to be able to spot it.
The command.
So obviously, he got to. Yeah. So you obviously didn't have the. So that's his problem, because what's going to possibly happen later, and maybe he's looking for short-term goals and big money rewards. That is kind of baseball these days. Is that it's inevitable that I go back to why are there so many injuries when in the era that so basically, listen, what I think about that, yes, no doubt, the sliders and the breaking pitches, but it's just you have to have control of your fastball. And there's no way at the major league level or at any level that you can consistently throw for years, seasons where you're throwing more breaking pitches than fastballs, unless that's not a breaking pitch because the changeup is the least hurtful. Fastball and changeup and a properly thrown curveball. So I'm telling you, we can't lose the fastball, Albert. We just have to properly place the fastball. And these are major league pitchers. I'm sure every pitching coach will say,
"All right, well,
and then work off of that."
Well, from one pitching category and group of pitches to a nice selection of young pitchers. Let me present this to you. Max Meyer last Saturday came out and threw an absolute gem against the best offense in baseball, the Atlanta Braves, for a fledgling Miami Marlins organization.
Right.
And how is he rewarded? He got sent down to AAA. Unfortunately for him, this situation, clearly isn't based on competitiveness. It's based on players and the organization's ability to control their steps and access to free agency. So, let me ask you this. Guys like Max Meyer and Paul Skeens, who's in AAA for the Pittsburgh Pirates, is the service time manipulation game something that you have beef with or no beef?
I have no beef with it. I really have no beef with it because I think that that's a business decision. It may come across like, that's not fair, but I don't have a beef with it because you do have to kind of work within the lines of the dramatics that has become arbitration. This thing is about arbitration because arbitration fuels free agency. Arbitration has gotten so heavy into multi-millions of dollars that by the time a kid, and I say a kid, gets to that year 5 going into year 6, if he's a starter, by that I mean starter in the everyday position, starter, that pitches regularly, he's at the $5-6 million level. So then free agency just shoots him automatically to a much more greater level. So teams are trying to control that. I get it. And I can play with that, calling them up in June or using the options up and down. I can understand that. What I don't understand is teams completely, trading away talent as they get closer to free agency, or even, dare I say, some teams like the Rays and Oakland and, certain other teams that are trading away exciting talent before arbitration. Now you've completely just, ripped the hearts of fans who are finally getting comfortable with a guy after he is fully in the big leagues and already vetted in, and they're not worrying about this option scenario. Play with the option because the fans aren't still, engaged with that kid. But once they are, that's the part that I have a problem with. You made your bed and agreed to arbitration 50 plus years ago. You let Marvin Miller, the head of the Players Association, trick you into arbitration. You know why they got arbitration? It's an interesting story. Marvin Miller held it in his back pocket because he was pushing free agency. I want free agency. And the teams back in the 70s were like, we don't want free agency. And he said, you're not going to let us be a free agent after 5 or 6 years? No, we're not ready for that. Okay, well then give us this thing called arbitration. Let us, at least after 3 years, let us be able to compare who's doing what against each other and see if we can make okay, we'll do that. And at the time, we were talking about tens of thousands of dollars. Right. Well, exponentially, it blew up in their face, and now they're trying to control arbitration, which drives free agency.
Really interesting point by the late great Marvin Miller, who really changed the landscape of professional baseball.
Sports
in general. Sports in general. But I'm on the other side of this. I got beef with it. I got beef, and I'll tell you why I got beef. I got beef because I don't like the way the organizations present it to the fan base in a way that's what I think is disingenuous.
Oh, okay.
I tell you, we got to keep this guy down in AAA because he needs to work on his seasoning. He's still developing, he's still growing, and all that is a load of BS. Because, the biggest instance of this, right, one of the most notable cases was Chris Bryant with the Chicago Cubs. Chris Bryant was so obviously and overtly manipulated with his service time that he ended up suing Major League Baseball. He had a whole lawsuit against it because they basically take these guys who they know are going to be established players and they just they play these tricks with the clock and the letter of the law, and I think that leaves a bad taste in the mouth of the fans. When you're a fan of a team and you have a young stud and your team is this close from being a playoff team or being even a World Series contending team, and you take these guys and you keep them down and then you try to say, hey, it's because he's not ready. Come on, that's bogus. The guy's ready. Here's what I think they should be doing. I think these organizations should be rewarded, and Major League Baseball is starting to do some things in the right way for this. I think they give an additional pick to teams that have players that receive Rookie of the Year votes, so that's a step in the right direction, right? I think what they should be doing is incentivizing these teams to bring the guys up. Let the best players play. Listen, this is Major League Baseball. This is the show. It's the big stage. So I believe at that level, the best players should be playing who are most deserving and can help the teams win. And what teams really should be doing, and again, to take a page out of Mr. Alex Anthopoulos and what the Atlanta Braves have done, is give these guys a chance. They brought up a guy like Michael Harris when he was 21 years old. And it's funny because Alex Anthopoulos made a quote and he said, listen, if we weren't as competitive as we were, we would probably have kept him in the minor leagues for a little bit longer.
Right.
But they were in that competitive window. And guess what happened, Not only did they bring him up and did he have success, but they had the foresight to say, you know what? This is a good player who's going to help our organization for a long time. Let's not go through that arbitration process, which, can get pretty ugly because arbitration, player versus organization, isn't fun for anyone. And they said, listen, we're just going to give this guy some security. They end up giving Michael Harris an 8-year deal, guaranteeing him $72 million. I think that's a better precedent for baseball, is elevating your young stars that are ready to compete. And if they're good, don't try to nickel and dime them. Reward them with security and make them a long-term part of your brand. I think teams and organizations that keep their stars for long periods of time are teams that have bigger and better fan bases. It's not fun to have a team that has players coming in and out every year. You've seen it a lot, unfortunately, in your market locally in Tampa Bay, right, where a lot of young stars will send, and by the time it's time for them to get paid, they're out the door. I'm going to
tell you real quick, I think that's great, but the key to the comment you made, which is fantastic comments, is the commitment by the ownership group and the quid pro quo of how much are they committed to, yes, making money. This is still a business, but to the community and to winning. And a great example is Atlanta. A great example, is some other teams like Houston Astros, St. Louis has tried to do that. Teams like the Rays have not. Teams like Atlanta, the Oakland A's have not. It's just been abysmal because they're more about the ROI year in, year out, and then the longevity of their ROI and the exponential numbers than, the true winning. So there's a real problem there, and you have, issues with have and have-nots.
It's a tough situation, and it's one here that I think as Major League Baseball needs to take some strides to improve. Speaking of improve, let's jump in over to another segment of ours here on Drop and Drive that I kind of like and enjoy. This one is Real Deal or Fake Action, where we describe whether we think someone or something is sustainable, legitimate, or are they kind of fake, not really the real deal here. First guy I'm going to talk to you about, is an interesting guy. Early this time last season, he was a member of those very same Atlanta Braves you just mentioned, batting in the middle of the lineup, and he was, statistically speaking, the worst player in baseball. We're talking about Marcell Ozuna. Marcell Ozuna was hitting about a $148 in the middle part of April, getting drowned by booze. Everyone's calling for him to get ran out of town, and I'll tell you what he's doing right now, He's leading Major League Baseball in home runs, slugging percentage, and RBIs. Marcell Ozuna, is he back to being an elite slugger? Is this season for him going to be the real deal, or is he fake action?
He's the real deal. And what was happening last year, you have to go even farther back before last year, because there's another real deal with him. He had real deal problems. He had off the field real legal problems that MLB slapped him on the hand, slapped him on the wrist about, and there was issues with some a DUI, a little domestic disturbance issues, and domestic violence, and I believe obviously that affected him on the field. And it took him a while. It took him definitely almost the first half of the season, because the second half of last year he found his groove. And he ended up having a very productive year. One of six guys that hit 30 plus home runs on that team. But I've always thought of Marcell Ozuna as an incredible offensive hitter. The Marlins, talk about a team we didn't even fit in the last segment that would unload players before that arbitration, numbers. They unloaded him at St. Louis. He ended up crushing over there. Atlanta smartly picked him up. And, I think he is the real deal. And you're seeing a more resolute, contrite, fixed mentally and physically Marcell Ozuna. And he could have, his greatest year this year and years to come, because he's still in that range that I always talk about, that 27 to 32, where the best of a Major League Baseball player comes about.
Oh, I'm with you on this. I think he is the real deal. And I think that some of those off-field issues got in his head. Man, baseball's such a difficult game. Hitting at the major league level, it's so difficult. And when you have other things that are creeping into your brain, you're showing up to the ballpark and you're not clear, you're not free, you're not easy, it's hard to be productive. And I think that now that all that stuff is behind him, he's allowed to go and do what he likes to do and what he's great at, which is hitting major league pitching with authority, being a presence in the middle of a lineup. I think, what's really interesting too is the last thing I'll add is he had a lot of support internally. The fan base, everybody, all the talking heads were get rid of this guy. But the word is that the guys in the clubhouse always respected and appreciated him and had his back, especially a lot of the younger Latin American ball players kind of looked up to him.
How about that?
As a guy who had been around and been a veteran. So I'm with you. I think he's the real deal. And listen, I thought if we had this segment this time last year, he would have been fake action in all caps and all bold. But I think this year he's going to have a big year this year, and I could see another 40-homer, 100 RBI season for Marcelo.
The guy that he compares very, very, favorably to is the other guy that they're hand in hand in these first couple, 3 weeks of the season in RBIs, is that Teoscar Hernandez with the Dodgers. So they're very similar players.
With similar roles,
monster
with similar
roles, not the stars, but can be stars.
Yeah, they're
you
not.
Know what I mean?
The Dodgers have Ohtani, Freeman, and Betts. The Braves have Acuna, Olsen, Albies. Those are the real big guys. And then the next tier, Riley. The next tier is Ozuna and Teoscar.
The Muncies, the Teoscar, those guys they're very important too. Though.
Very important, very important. Jumping over to another team here, that's had a really hot start. I want your take on these guys because this is a really interesting team. Every year, I feel like no one gives them credit. No one thinks they're going to do anything. And then, they're always competitive. Terry Francona led that team for a long time. And I'm talking about the Cleveland Guardians.
Yep.
They're off to a 12-6 start.
Yes, sir.
12-6. You look at that roster. You look at that organization. You don't expect too much. Man, but they're playing some really good baseball against some pretty competitive teams. So tell me this. Are the Cleveland Guardians the real deal, or are they fake action?
They are 12-6 and crushing the baseball, but they're fake action. I'm going to be candid with you. There's only really one real action on that team, and it's a perennial all-star potential, always top 5 MVP. That's the machine from Bani, Dominican Republic, Jose Ramirez. And as we say in Spanish, punto y aparte. They have some talented parts. Don't get me wrong. I really like a lot of their little pieces, and they as a team, by the way, collectively got together earlier this season, back like in January. A lot of them were together like in December, and they really worked offensively to literally get stronger. So they trained together and they got physically stronger, and they've come out like a house on fire offensively as far as hitting more for power, because they really didn't have that much power in the last couple of years, other than, a smattering of guys and Jose Ramirez, right? They really haven't been a power team ever since the great years of Ramirez and his left side counterpart, Francisco Lindor. After Lindor left, it's been a gap of having that second monster guy. I still don't believe in them. I really don't. I kind of feel the same way that I do, and I know you disagree with me, but like the Pittsburgh Pirates. Some young, exciting talent. I might even be a little tick up higher on Pittsburgh because of the 3-pack of young arms that they have, but I don't see that for the Guardians. And now with the loss of Bieber in their rotation going down to Tommy John, I think that this is a team that is destined to level out, so to speak, and pick the playoffs, maybe win that division. I think not.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I agree. I think they're fake action. And it's, I think your points were were some really strong ones. I really like that Jose Ramirez stayed in Cleveland. He signed an extension. I thought they had a really nice nucleus 4 or 5 years ago when Lindor was there, when the pitching was strong, and then they traded away Lindor. They talked about trading Ramirez. It was kind of ugly. I kind of felt for that fan base and for that city.
Totally.
It's a team that plays baseball very differently than most teams. If you look at how they've won and competed, they don't do it the way that most teams do. They're not a bunch of power arm strikeout pitchers and home run
power. Yeah, no.
They play defense. They pitch to contact. They base run. They hit to contact too. They have some of the lowest strikeout rates year in, year out. They got guys like Steven Kwan, Jose Ramirez, Andres Jimenez. A lot of really nice, smart batsmen more than sluggers and big hitters. So I'm with you. I think that division is really the Minnesota Twins for the taking. I think that's
100%.
Probably the most well put together team in that division. I think the Guardians will be competitive because they do the little things right, but I do not think that they are the real deal just yet. So as of now, I got them put them as fake action.
Okay.
This next guy,
I can't believe he's even in here, by the way. I'm gonna put a caveat before you even say this name to question. But go ahead.
Can you believe that our next candidate on Real Deal or Fake Action is the one, the only Mike Trout? This would have been blasphemous, in baseball circles to consider Trout, who many say might be the best player of the last 20 years, to consider whether he's been the real deal or fake action. But, ever since Mike Trout has turned the big 3-0, he hasn't been the Trout of old. He's been kind of the old Trout. In 2019,
You're not fishing for this Trout?
I'm not fishing for that one. He hasn't really been himself, but I'll tell you this, he came into spring training a little different this year under new manager Ron Washington. He said, I want to compete. I want to be here for the Angels. And it's a shame that we haven't seen that team make it to the postseason. But he looks different again. He's tied with Marcell Ozuna for the major league lead in home runs. By the way, he stole 2 more bases today to get his total to 5, which, believe it or not, is his highest stolen base total since 2019, and we're in the middle of April.
But there's a reason for that.
The
team asked him to stop stealing bases. That was an impetus from the team, from upstairs, from Artie Moreno and his GM, and probably his own agent. Like, please, don't get hurt stealing bases. So I don't know if I agree with that, but I kind of do, because his real, power and take is in so many other aspects of his game. What is your take on that? Is he real or fake action?
Well, I'll give you this tidbit. That same organization tried to baby another superstar in Shohei Ohtani. They said, hey, when he pitches, we don't want him to hit. We want you to pitch one day and hit another.
That's true. That is a good point.
And guess what time he started to really click offensively is when they finally said, if you want to pitch and hit the same day, you can go ahead and do that. I think when you have these really elite guys that are different in terms of that athleticism, the Trout,
you gotta let him run.
You gotta let him run, buddy. You can't have a Corvette and keep it in the garage.
In the state,
You gotta let it run, man. So I think that Ron Washington coming in and telling Mike Trout, listen, man, go play baseball the way you play baseball. Go play the game the way your body has been built to play your whole life. This guy came up, and this was a 30-30, 40-40 guy. This is a guy that
was supposed to be that for at least a decade, and it wasn't. He was 30-40 home runs and RBIs and stuff, great defense, but invariably he was getting hurt, and it wasn't always stealing bases.
Yeah,
so you're right.
Yeah.
Getting hit with a pitch. Yeah.
I think you're giving him an opportunity to play the game, lets him mentally put himself and say, you know what? I'm Mike Trout, man. Some people might have change their mind on me, but I'm still the best baseball player on earth, and I'm going to play the game like I'm that. So I think Mike Trout is back, and I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I can't ever not think that he's the real deal. I could never. I think the words can't come out of my mouth. Fake action when Mike Trout. It's a valid. It's a valid question mark. I will tell you that. I never even thought that there would be even a question mark. But you have to look at the numbers objectively, and a lot of them have to do with the myriad of injuries that he's had and the lack of being able to play, 150 games year in and year out. You start questioning, what happened to the greatness. Not that he's not great, but what happened to the overall greatness of 150 games and perennial. He is a 3-time MVP. Let's not forget that. Okay, so I agree with you. I would add this, the reason that he is a real deal. I know Ron Washington very well. I have dealt with Ron Washington, played against Ron Washington many moons ago. And you are on the point when you said that Ron Washington probably came in and sat him down one-on-one, probably in the offseason, and they met and they go, how are we going to play baseball this year? And he said, what are you telling me? I go, do you want to, open it up again? Or do you just want to kind of just worry about home runs and RBIs? And he probably said, let's go. And there where you see 5 stolen bases, if you extrapolate it out, you're looking at a 30 stolen base season for him, right? Dare I say maybe even 40. That would be nuts. If he goes 40-40, I mean, we're talking another MVP. Now you're putting Mike Trout, who everybody is thinking like now he's become one-dimensional or two-dimensional when he was five-dimensional. Now you put him in the level again, rightfully so, of the Acuñas and the Mookie Betts, who are, I don't know the age difference, but I want to say at least 7 or 8 years younger than him. So I would love to see it. An incredible athlete, a great representative of baseball, a good guy. Always heard nothing but good things about the kid, about the man. And he's real deal, real action. Let it go. And maybe one day, and it's not this year for darn sure, they'll get that extra pieces or two, and they can challenge, for a real spot in the American League.
Yep, only 32 years old. Also, he's not
32. I was going to say 34.
Only 32 years old, man.
Yeah, because he came up so young. He came up so young.
20. So I think in Mike Trout's mind, he's still the king of the hill until somebody dethrones him as the best. Speaking of king of the hill,
right?
Let's take a look at what's ahead this week. What is the biggest story in front of us? And what is on the horizon? Or for us here at Drop and Drive, what's on the horizon?
Yeah.
To me, is this story right here?
What do you
it's
got?
The king of the hill in terms of the reigning world champions, the Texas Rangers, facing off with the 2021 world champions and potentially the World Series favorites. It's Braves and Rangers squaring off this weekend. This is the marquee matchup, and I'll tell you this. Last year, you and I had a conversation on a different program, and you told me you were early on you were big on the Rangers early, and I told you I thought they were kind of fake action.
Yeah.
So it turns out I was wrong, and they won it all. But here's my take. I think the Rangers are better this year than they were last year.
Arguably, they are, and they have a couple hammers, chomping at the bit to come and maybe partake late in the season for them. We don't know exactly when DeGrom could be back, but I think he's gone the whole year. Is he gone the whole year?
Yeah, DeGrom and Scherzer are going to be pitching later this season, so they got
that's what I thought.
Horses looming.
They got 2 horses looming, and hopefully rested and ready. And that could be very dangerous. They have an incredible offense. They're still not as good an offense as what the Braves can be when they're hitting all their cylinders. But I think that's a great horizon to look forward to. That weekend series is a telltale sign. It is a little bit odd and a little bit interesting that MLB scheduling, and that's for another show. Maybe we'll talk about it. Early on, a lot of goofy interleague play this year in the early first couple of 3 weeks that you're seeing some crossover interleague. I don't particularly like it, to be honest with you, because I like the heads-to-heads in the first month and then the heads-to-heads in the last month. Give me the interleague play in the middle 4 months, because that's where the excitement is, right? League play, divisional play in April and in September, as in let's get into the gist of this season. But interesting, Braves, Rangers. I'm fascinated by that. I've got a couple things that I think are going to be interesting to watch this weekend. Are the Houston Astros ever going to wake up in April here? Are they, they're playing a lowly Nationals team that's also off to a debacle of a start. But the Nationals, honestly, have actually probably played overall better, dare I say, than the Houston Astros. So, got to keep an eye on what's going on with the Astros. They're getting no hit. They're getting beat up. Some of the games they're losing is like lopsided. So I'm a little bit skewed with that one. And then one other thing to look forward is always the great David and Goliath battle in the Big Apple. It's the Tampa Bay Rays, going to visit the New York Yankees. The Yankees, boasting, the best record in baseball. They got 13 wins. The Rays quietly, and like the little engine that could, have snuck in there back again with 10 wins. And, if they come away with a hot weekend, now all of a sudden they're back in the swing of things and talks of things, which a team that is not that impressive to me, the Tampa Bay Rays, compared to a team that I am impressed with, and I'm expecting a lot of, the New York Yankees.
Some interesting storylines, definitely. And we look forward to covering those next week. We thank you guys for joining us here at Drop and Drive. Please like and subscribe to the program. For my co-host, The Big O, I'm your host, Albert Destrade. We'll see you guys next week.